So this is going to be a video on how to magnetize and build the Arc Lord Discordant. So we just got one in. So it had actually pre-released about 5 days ago. So we just got our hands on it now, and I just built it. And I wasn't going to do a building video because it's pretty straightforward. Plus, there's a dozen of them out there right now. But when I was building it, there were a few things that really threw me for a loop, and I wanted to share them just for anybody else who's thinking of ordering it or thinking of building it. So if you've already know from the codex, it comes with 2 weapons on the front of them, as well as 2 weapons choices on the torso. So you can have a bale flamer, or you can have an auto gun. Both are here and here. And you can also have a magma cutter, or you can have a techno-virus injector, which is basically just a fancy needle. So the problem with building him is that you don't get both choices unless you build them very specifically. So for the first part, let's talk about the mandible weapon here. So move these parts out of the way for a minute. And we're going to bring out the instruction manual. And as you can see from the instruction manual, the first thing you're going to do is put the carapace and the head together, and then you're going to choose the mandible weapon. Now the problem with this is that you can either choose the injector or the magma cutter, but they're both on the same piece of plastic. And what ends up happening was when you insert them into the head, you get the one in the front, and the other one becomes buried and actually becomes the neck, which is very annoying if you want to use both of them. So what I ended up doing is I ended up cutting it right next to the magma cutter here, and then I ended up cutting it over here next to the techno-virus injector. So the problem with my build is that while I have the magma cutter, and what I did was I just glued the lighter fuel source to the magnet I put in, and I have the injector as well with a magnet glued onto it. And then I took the mandible and I put the magnet here, is that if you flip them over, I'm actually missing the neck in here. Trying to get that in the light. Now, it's not the end of the world. You don't notice it, but it does make it tricky to build because you are missing one glued on piece. But in exchange for that, I do have the ability to switch between both front end weapons with the injector or with the magma cutter. Now with the carapace mounted weapon, we have a similar problem. So what ends up happening is you can either build the autocannon, which is fine, or you can build a bale flamer, which is also fine. Each of them has a different strand of ammunition or power that comes off of it, and both of those have a glue spot located in the shoulder, and then worse still, you end up covering it with this shoulder pad here. So one piece goes in and then it's all glued together, and that makes it very hard to swap them. The piece it sticks into just sticks out like that, and it has a little nub, and that little nub goes in the hole. So the front end is generally easy, but it's this piece here that I had trouble with. Now what I ended up doing was I actually cut this power conduit here, leaving these strands loose. I then perma-glued that into the space and mounted the shoulder pad, leaving both set of power wire strands loose, and then I magnetized the bases. So as you can see with the model specifically, then if you look very closely, I've got those 2 power wires located right here in and amongst the shoulder pad, and then I've cut them off at the top there, and then I've also magnetized, and I've double magneted to get some height, the mounting bracket. And then I've magnetized the base of the bale flamer and left the 2 cords dangling. But I can snap them in place, and it's pretty close that I can convince people that there's the power cords there. And it gave me the flexibility to also add the autocannon with just a strand of ammunition hanging loose. The last problem was the tendril, which had a claw on it, which was mounted to the base of the gun. So I cut that free, glued it together here, and sort of mangled my way to a new handle on the gun here. But now he doesn't actually touch the gun. You can maneuver him if you want to. And he can do it if you have to. But effectively, that was what we compromised on in order to be able to magnetize either or. As far as the weapon mounts go. So that was our trade-off ways to magnetize him to give us that flexibility. But now we can run him with any of the weapons loadouts we want. So if you think this is interesting, this is sort of one sleazy way that you can get that mounted together. Then you can play WYSIWYG. Now as far as painting goes, since we're still here, I didn't mount him to the base. That easily gives us access to the underside of the model. As well, I didn't actually glue the Archlord on board yet. And then that lets me paint both him up, all these warp tendrils, as well as getting the seat where he's at painted up as well without him in the way. And then the last thing we did is I didn't cover over this brain processing thing here. There are some smokestacks that go on board just like so. But with them in place, it'll be impossible to paint inside there. So we did some sub builds just to give us access to that. And then what I'll do is we'll build that and glue that together and glue him on board once the painting is done. And then we'll still be able to switch through our magnetic armaments. So I don't know if you found this video helpful or not, but I wanted to make sure you were aware of what was part of the build process, especially if you want to give yourself a bunch of flexibility. So if you like this video, hit like on the bar below, subscribe to the channel if you find it helpful, and we will be back with a painting video for this in the next couple of days.